finding the silver linings in love, life, and everything in between.
Welcome to the Silva Lining Podcast.
Here we explore everything from faith to relationships to personal growth and purpose.
Join us as we center these conversations around real life experiences and vulnerability as two young people figuring it all out.
We're happy to have you along for the ride. On today's episode, we talk about the first 6 months of marriage and everything that we've learned.
We talk about some of the things like leaving and cleaving, learning to die to self, the transition of moving from living in your own home to now living in a home together.
And shifting your center of gravity.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Hey everyone, happy Valentine's Day.
And welcome to the first episode of our podcast. So I think the last time we were here was actually Valentine's Day 2020.
Yeah. And back then we were just like boyfriend and girlfriend. And here we are now, 6 months into marriage.
Wow. Times are flying.
Yeah.
So we thought for our first episode, we would actually go over these past 6 months being married and talk about some of the things that we've learned, how we've grown, maybe how we've been stretched a little from both Shannon's perspective and my perspective. So why don't you start with some of the things that you've learned as we've been living together and being married for these past few months?
First of all, I didn't anticipate how long you'd spend in the bathroom.
Wow.
But yeah, so everyone that makes memes and jokes online about how long their husbands take in the washroom, it's actually facts.
I feel like you do some of the best thinking. For me personally, I do some of the best thinking on the toilet because it's the only place where you have complete total silence and you're just focusing on one thing.
But you're okay, sure. So to answer your question about something that I've learned in the last 6 months, I think really and truly has been how important it is for me to have my own relationship with God and be just 10 toes deep into the, what is that
10 toes deep.
Is that the saying?
Hood gal out here.
Is that the saying? 10 toes deep, 10 toes down?
10 toes down, I think.
Okay,
yeah.
well, whichever. All of the toes are in. And just digging deep into the word to anchor myself. Because I know as much as people make it seem like marriage is a fairy tale and all of these amazing, wonderful sunshine and rainbows and all of the things, while it is those things, sometimes or a large part of the times, there are also really humbling, stretching moments like you've talked about earlier. And honestly, I think it's by the grace of God that people have marriages that last 40, 50, 60 years, right? And usually those marriages are anchored in something beyond the people themselves. And I think faith is that kind of driving factor that really pushes you on the days where, the feelings aren't all there.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it actually ties into my first point, which I've titled servanthood beyond feelings and, commitment beyond feelings. Because I think what I've learned increasingly in this season is, when we get into an argument here or there, or even in general in life, even a non-marital relationship, someone upsets you, you're not inclined to want to do stuff for them. You want to seclude yourself, or you want to isolate yourself, or just focus on you and prioritize you in that moment. And I found that part of being the man of God that the Bible says that I need to be, that I need to love you as Christ loved the church. That means serving you and doing things for you and keeping status quo in terms of the things that you require and you need on a regular, regardless if I'm upset at you, regardless if I feel bitter with you, regardless if, you didn't agree with my opinion on something, and that may look like something as simple as I still fill your water bottle up, when we're in an argument, I could not feel.
And I still make dinner for you.
Yes, for sure. And also too, because now we're living in a home, we have shared responsibility. I think when we were dating, we had this opportunity to be upset each other away from each other. And there's nowhere for us to go. At least that wouldn't be the appropriate thing for us to do, is leave. Is we have to deal with, the fallout of an argument living together. And that could be tense sometimes. That could be tough. So, that looks like, getting things for you that you need, as you're getting ready in the morning, or, packing stuff for you, or doing your laundry and all of the other things, So,
And I think like beyond, I know you said like servanthood, irregardless of like your feelings, but I think also like just what you said after that, like commitment regardless of feelings is even more important.
Yeah.
Because it might not be like filling up my water bottle, but it's like maintaining like the mindset and like the heart posture that, okay, even if things aren't good, like this is still my person, their best is still at the forefront of like what I'm doing,
Yeah.
is still prioritize like caring about them and their feelings. And I think like something that like I've learned, because before, like when you were dating and like you had the ability to just take your phone and fling it over
Yeah.
there. Like if you, ouch, like if you, clearly this is our first time, but like if you had like an argument, like you'd be able to like distance yourself. But something I did in the first few fights that we had was kind of like choosing to like give you like the silent treatment. But I recognize now that like taking time away in the midst of a conflict is much different than like weaponizing silence to like prove a point.
Yeah.
And those are like two very different things. And I think one of the things that we do now, 6 months later, that in the first month we weren't doing as much, or second month as much, is like now we like alert each other to what our primal needs are in
Yeah.
the moment where we're having an argument.
Yeah.
So, or like where conflict and like tensions are rising and whatnot. So like for you, for example, like you might often, like what is it that you normally say when we're having an argument?
Like it's getting nowhere. I think we should just stop having conversation, take a break, and come back to it.
Right. And so like what you need in that moment is to like have a reprieve and like leave from the situation, not like outside the house, but like just to have a moment to like breathe and to like, collect your thoughts and like bring yourself back down to like baseline. And for me, like in those moments, like, you've addressed that in the past and you're like, oh, like, can we just like not talk about this right now? Like I've been like really triggered because my primal need in those moments is reassurance. And so I think like where we've grown in the last 6 months is like finding like a delicate balance between the two and like being able to be vulnerable in the midst of a fight. Because I know sometimes when you're arguing, it's like you literally have to bear yourself to the other person to be like, hey, like I want to be right, but I also like need this from you. Like I'm also feeling very vulnerable or very hurt or very insecure. And in this moment, like I know you need space, but I also need to know that like you're there.
Yeah. And I think one thing that I really picked up from our premarital course, which for those that don't know, at least in our church body, our pastor won't marry us unless we take this premarital course. And I actually suggest taking some form of premarital course, regardless of your religion, or some kind of premarital counseling, because you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about who you are, what informs how you communicate, and maybe what triggers you during a fight. And what we learned a lot is that your upbringing, your environment, and your family has a huge part in playing and how you react to your spouse. So there's expectations that may be unsaid. There's context that we don't give each other. And a part of this season of life it almost seems like we're scripting conversation, but that's what I initially felt when we were doing that course. But as I've come to grow and learn with you, is I'm providing the context that you wouldn't know from the surface level. Like, when you said that, it reminds me of this. Or when you said that, that makes me feel unappreciated. Or when, you said that, I feel like you're not hearing me. And being open and honest and vulnerable, yeah, it is scary work, but it's necessary if you're going to build a life that lasts. Remember that one night we had that conversation, and I think I asked you, I'm like, all right, so you like to deal with it and get the reassurance in the moment. I like to just retreat, right? And again, those are informed by triggers in our past. So I said, how do we reconcile and balance both of those things?
Right. Because at some point, like you're picking the way that the other person wants.
Yeah.
And so if you're constantly the person who you know, like your thing is to want to have like a break. But every time you're having to like reassure the other person in the midst of the fight, then you're also kind of like denying yourself the needs that you have. But I think like it really boils down to like compromise and in like the moment being able to hear both sides. So now we've both grown to a place where you're able to be like, hey, okay, like let me communicate to her because she needs reassurance. So like you'll tell me like, hey babe, like I'm gonna take like half an hour to like go read my word or like to worship. And like we did that one night
Yeah.
and it worked really, really well. Like we were able to like calm ourselves down and then come back. And I remember like we came back before the time that we said that we needed, but we were just so much calmer than when we left the situation.
Cooler heads prevail.
Yeah, but like we were able to do that because we communicated clearly to one another. Like, okay, this is how much time we need apart.
Yeah. And I think a helpful part of that process, because there isn't a perfect science, like, all right, the next 20 fights, you get to deal with it how you want. The next 20, I need to. And like PSA, if you're getting in marriage and thinking that you're not going to have fights, then you have an unrealistic expectation of marriage, because there's a lot of things that bubble up in that first year. And there's a lot of things that bubble up in year 30. And that's what our premarital counselor was talking to us about. Like there's things that it takes a lifetime to learn. And I think that's actually a beauty of relationship is, even though I thought I knew you in dating and engagement season, there's so much that I'm learning about you that I love and I appreciate. But, you know, one thing I said in my vows, and I'm not perfect at it, but I said in my vows that I'm committed to doing is to not keep a tally. And, you know,
You do that sometimes.
I do that sometimes, and it's not right. And it's something that I don't like about myself. But I'm working on it and I'm working through it.
Just to clarify.
But, you know, even in that space, you know, now I can't come to you and be like, okay, but last fight we tried it your way and we needed to do it my way. Yeah. I think what we're trying to say is that, one, it's based on moment by moment, and two, like having a heart for your other person. Of course, if there's some kind of imbalance, then you address it, right? Like we've always been trying this way. I think for me, it matters more that I have a heart to love on my wife the way she needs to be.
Right. And I think like fundamentally, like respect is like key. Like I think as like a foundational thing to like build your marriage upon like mutual respect and like an ethic of care is really important. So like regardless of like me being mad at you, me like not wanting to talk to you or whatever the case is because you've done something so horribly, or vice versa, because I can also probably do things that are horrible as well.
Yeah.
If we maintain the fact that, okay, like at the end of the day, like respect is the thing, then I think it kind of shifts the whole way and environment that like conflicts can occur.
And I want to make it clear, like we're saying like we're fighting, but like we're not like having like these crazy like you know, toxic fights. I think if we actually, because you're a researcher, if we actually take the data from all of our fights, I'm pretty sure 95% of it is just like petty, like I was missing you today, or I had a bad day in another area of my life and I'm just like moody or you know, feeling a bit stressed. And one of the things that I think we're trying to implement more recently is doing a temperature check, you know, every day, because we call each other all the time. Like if I'm at work, you know, she'll call me on my lunch or vice versa. And, you know, we're talking about how our day was. And I might say, oh, you know, this happened today at work and it was just so annoying. But I'm not really opening up about like how I'm actually feeling about that. Like, you know, this makes me stressed out. Like this makes me anxious about maybe job security, or that, like there's so many layers to that one statement that I haven't unpacked with you. And one of the things we're doing is, you know, when I come home, it's like, you know what, like I'm feeling like a 6 right now, or I'm feeling like a 4 right now. And again, it seems like you're scripting conversation, but again, you're telling your person how you're feeling. So maybe if today you had planned to talk about something that you wanted to correct me on, or something that you wanted to address that was bothering you, it's not to say that it has to be pushed aside, but maybe this isn't the right time to bring that into the space when they're already feeling something, so it won't compound on each other. Right. Because I'm sure you'd want to tell me, or I'd want to tell you something when you're feeling at least not your best, but at least in a better space. Right. So.
I totally agree. And I think like again, that's something that it shouldn't always be like one person, like always like, closing themselves off from saying what they feel because the other person is consistently having level 2 days,
Yeah.
so that they can't feel comfortable to like say something.
Going back to your original point, which is having your own relationship with God and the importance of that. Like I said, Jesus says, love you, or in the Bible says, love your wife as Christ loved the church, and die for your wife as Christ died for the church. And that's a huge, sobering calling. Not that I would never like jump in front of a bullet for you, like I 100% would, but I think it's even harder to put aside your pride, put aside your way of always doing something, and erring on the side of, okay, what does my person need? What does my partner feel about this situation? And that doesn't always line up with your agreement of how they're dealing with it. So I think for me, one of the things that I need to work on it and be better at is learning that we're a unit and we're a team, and that if you win, I win. And I think in my past and just in general about how I've dealt with people who have disagreed with me, I've not been able to take correction well because I've always seen it as an attack on my character. So now in this season of life, when you're correcting me, sometimes it rubs me the wrong way, but I have to see, unless you're like actually coming to me and be like, yo, like you're straight whack, like that's not correction, that's hurtful talk. But when you're coming to me and you're saying, hey, I notice you do this, maybe you can try it this way, it's not because you're trying to like baby me or
like hurt you
or hurt me
or disrespect.
It's you want me to be one better for me.
Right.
And now we represent each other. Like we want to be strong in these areas for each other because we represent each other. When you go out in public, when I go to work, even though you're not there, I represent us as a unit, our family. Because even though we don't have kids, we are a family, right? So I have to be mindful of that. It's not coming from a negative place, and I can't project and superimpose how I feel about that comment. But again, it's opening up that space again to unpack that and say, hey, when you said that, I made me feel like this, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah. And I think that's why, like, for like the ladies, because the narrative is that, wives are always nagging their husbands. Like, that's the narrative around that kind of thing that you're just expressing. I think correction done in love is much more well received than correction that comes off as like nagging or belittling. And that's something that I also had to learn as well. I normally, like, not to like toot my own horn or anything, but usually things come easy to me. And so like sometimes I like, this is like a real vulnerable moment for me, but like sometimes I assume that everyone will just have the same like ability to just get something like right away. And I've had to be humbled like through our conversations and disagreements to like realize that you have your own set of strengths, and the things that you're good at, some of them I'm not good at, like setting up all this equipment. I couldn't have done that. Right. And so like that has been something that I've had to learn, that, I have to like speak to you with kindness, even when I am correcting you, because it will be more well received than when I'm berating you or, nagging you.
I don't think you berate me like you're saying, but
I don't think I do that. But I'm just saying in general, like I think the tone in which you communicate with your person, again, needs to be rooted in love and affection and respect. Otherwise, it comes across as like you're not on the same team. Like this is somebody who like is enforcing like a power dynamic on me. Like this is like a coach as opposed to my teammate.
Yeah.
And like the dynamic you should have in a marriage, I don't think is like a coach and I'm not good with sports. What is a coach and a player?
Yeah.
It's more so like two teammates that are in it for the same goal. It's not like the coach who's like trying to get the team somewhere. It's like two people playing for the same purpose.
All right. So what I wanted to talk about next was this idea of leaving and cleaving, which is talked about in the Bible, and being united with your wife. I think a lot of people have this idea that on wedding day, a switch just flips and you become a husband just like that. But beyond like a ceremony and a title, it doesn't necessarily make you a husband. And there's a lot to be said that can be prepared for in the season of dating and engagement, that you can learn to do to prioritize your person. And, that could look like multiple things, like, getting your finances in line so that you have a common goal together to build, generational wealth or buy a home or, save for a wedding. That can look like, defending your spouse, in the face of other people who disagree with your relationship, who disagree with the choices that you're making. And I think our wedding season, and we have to have a whole separate episode about that, but there's not going to be a lot of people that always co-sign on your ideas, but you still have to love and support your spouse through what you guys know that you want to do together.
Yeah.
And I think just in general, learning to be the man that God's called you to be doesn't have to wait until that ceremony happens, and I've learned that it's more important, to be united with your wife through the things that you're doing because when you're in your dating season, it's all about your individuality. But now you have to live and you have to exist with another person. And that takes some groundwork and some prep work, so that might look like, let's do this, premarital course that we did because we want to do stuff that we're going to grow our relationship. Let's, start looking at places where we want to live and, talk about certain questions and things about like, when do you want to have kids, or when do you want to, pursue A, B, and C in your life? And it's going to take the time out of things that you used to do as a single person, right? So you can't be so divided in your time where you're trying to still live the single life and trying to prepare for this marriage, so that might look like you're not going out with your friends 24/7, but you're spending more time with your person so that you can grow in your relationship more deeply. That may look like you're not with your family 24/7 as well, but you're going to have to start prioritizing your person because you're going to live with them all the time. Right? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it ties into something that was really like kind of like a rude awakening for me. Like, obviously, I knew after we got married, I would be living with you and like this would be my new home and like I would have like a new family with you. But I think it was such a bittersweet experience for me, like having lived at home with my parents and my brother and my dog for my entire life and then having to shift to now just living, like just seeing you every single day. Not that that's a bad thing, obviously, but like it was just such a switch for me. And like recognizing like your center of gravity shifts when you get married. As much as like you love and appreciate and would do anything for the family that you came from, the family that you're building is equally, if not more important.
Yeah.
Right. And like, I think like it's really wonderful when the family that you comes from is also helping along, like helping you in that process of like moving into this new space. And that's like a conversation for another time. But I think it's been really helpful to like sort of navigate that through like having conversations with my family.
Yeah.
Right. And like grieving the process of like leaving home. Like you see like all the time. I don't know if this happens in other cultures, but like in brown people weddings, like, or like immigrant children weddings, like there's always like so much tears.
Yeah.
That like accompany the wedding day. And like surprisingly, like I thought my parents were going to cry a lot more, but I think it's because they low key liked me. So, they didn't cry as much as I thought they would have, but it is such like, and I'm not a parent, right? But I can like put myself in the shoes of people that have put their everything into raising this child. And then this child is no longer part of like your everyday, like they're no longer part of like your life in the same capacity that they were before.
Yeah. So
like I can kind of like understand like why parents like cry and stuff. But like even for me as like a daughter, like feeling like I'm not home anymore and like feeling guilty, like, if like my mom's ever sick and I'm not readily available to like be there every single second of every single date.
Yeah.
Like it's a tough thing to have to like navigate. But as I was saying before, like it is biblical to like recognize that like your center of gravity shifts.
Yeah.
And a really big thing that we're kind of walking through now is like navigating like boundaries with like family, like extended family as well, right? And like thinking about and negotiating like how do we divide our time? Like how do we use our time? How do we have our own traditions but still, like make space for like the legacies and like the nostalgia and like the traditions of our like upbringing as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think something important about what you were talking about in terms of, dynamic shift and changes, because it hits you like a truck when you get married. Like it's this weird dichotomy of like pure joy and like anxiety because you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this, or, how will this look like? And I think it's giving yourself the grace to understand that that season of your life is normal, that it's going to be different, that it won't always be like that, and allow yourself to I don't want to be cheesy, but go with the flow, because you're not going to have it all figured out. No matter what you do in your dating season of life, relationship TikToks or even podcasts like ours, you're not going to have it all figured out. So you need to give yourself the space to grow into that and understand and recognize that this is a lifetime. But one thing I wanted to ask you was, can you name a few of those like very distinct things that were just weird when you first moved here? Because it wasn't like we had like a moving in day per se.
Yeah, it was just like process.
A process, right?
But like obviously you were living here before.
Yeah.
So like that was one thing. Like you were already accustomed to like our home and like how you did things, and like you had a routine of like being here. And like when I came in, it was kind of like, well, this was like Matthew's home.
Yeah, because
like we bought it together.
The first few months you were like, this doesn't feel home. Back home doesn't feel home. I feel like I'm like this like wanderer.
Yeah, like I felt like this nomad in between places of like belonging, and like where do I belong? Because like you said, like my parents' home, my familial home was not my place of residence anymore.
Yeah.
Right. And then this home, like I wasn't used to this being my home. And so that definitely was a really big thing to like get used to. And like it took time. Like, and I think like being like gracious to yourself is really, really important, because just because you're also grieving and mourning or like experiencing these feelings of like bittersweetness, which is really what it is. Like joy, and like you say this all the time, but like joy and sorrow kind of like run parallel in life. And that's really what it was. I think like throughout our wedding planning journey, we experienced some really, really low lows.
Yeah.
But we also obviously got married, and it was something that we really wanted and something that brings us such great joy.
Yeah.
Like being together and living together and being husband and wife. But yeah, like knowing that if you're feeling moments of extreme sadness because you're grieving those relationships that no longer look the way that they once used to, I think that that's normal.
Yeah.
And we kind of like categorize things so it's one way or the other, like black and white, and you're allowed to have areas of gray.
Yeah.
And I was like feeling guilty at first because I was like, why do I feel like this? I married the best guy in the world. Like this should be the most.
I married the best girl in the world.
Thanks. But like I was like, this should be the most amazing fairy tale kind of thing of my life. But then I was recognizing that I was also processing, like, and my therapist was telling me, like, these periods of transition are fraught with all sorts of emotions that are like on varying parts of the spectrum. So it's only normal and natural for you to feel conflicting feelings about things. And it's not that I've ever like felt conflicting feelings about you, but the transition itself has been riddled with so many different mixed emotions.
Well, I talked about this recently on Instagram, that you need to allow your spouse the space to feel what they feel. One, without getting triggered as if like they're upset at you, or internalize that like if Shannon's happy, oh well, I just haven't built the life that she's happy about and it's my fault. Like she's not happy because of me. But recognizing that there's so many things underlying, and that's such a loaded way of looking at like how you're feeling. Like there's so much things that I can't see from the surface, like we mentioned before. So, not internalizing that, but being with your person through that. Because now we're in this space where when we're out in certain settings where she's comfortable, she's an extrovert. But normally she's an introvert and her social battery dies like 20 minutes into any social event. 15 minutes. But now, when I see that look from your face, or when I go and talk with you, you're like, I want to go to my home. So now you feel like it's your home. So what do you think helped you transition into the space of this feels like home?
Honestly, I think time is a really big thing. Like in any adjustment in life, in anything that requires change, you have to give yourself time to like acclimate, to like adjust, to learn how to like be flexible in the new whatever it is, in the new city, in the new job, in the new relationship, whatever the case is. So yeah, I think time was a really big thing.
All right, so I just want to do something quick before we wrap up. So, name two of the best things about marriage now and being a homeowner, and two of the most challenging things.
Okay. So I think we should do one and one.
Okay.
So then it's like,
sure,
I don't steal your answers.
All right.
Like, oh.
Yeah, then I have
like
nothing
when
left
the
to say.
kid puts their hand up in class and you're like, well, I was going to say.
Sure.
So that's why it's fair.
Got you.
Okay. So the best thing about marriage for me is like knowing that you have someone that is like riding with you till the end. Like that
Okay,
level,
Dominic Toretto.
that level of commitment and like covering the covenant of marriage, like knowing that no matter what, like you're there for me and you are for me is like a really big thing for me. And it's like grounding, and it like helps my anxiety knowing that, our relationship is solid. Like being married is a different level of covering from being engaged or from dating. Like,
True.
I just want to put that out there. Like the fact that like we are literally under God in covenant with one another is a whole different realm of commitment to me just being your boyfriend. I mean, girlfriend. To me just being your girlfriend and you being my boyfriend.
Yeah.
Like, I just want to put that out there first and foremost. So that's the biggest thing. Like knowing that I am covered, I'm spoken for by you, like I am protected by you. I am like someone has my back every single day. Like that is the best part of marriage so far.
And it's like an intimacy on a different level than just the dating season. I think for me, if maybe I'll go with mine next is, I think the best thing about marriage for me is that I've realized that there's so much more depth to the love that you have for me than just that season of dating. Like, I don't want to be like, I don't want to sound like, old fashioned or anything. But when we first got married in those first few weeks, I went back to work and I came home, like you came correct with like the best meals ever. And I didn't know that there was even more of a deeper way that I could love you, because it wasn't that you were just making these bomb, Carmen Brizzato type meals for me every time I came home. But it was the fact that you cared about me so much to take your time and your effort to like craft something so tasty and so beautiful, and something that like it just spoke to my heart in a way that that was refreshing. Because when you're dating, you say and you do a lot of things to show that you love people, but when you're married, you have an opportunity to like be with that person every day, and love doesn't always look like the grand gestures. It looks like the everyday commitment. And you entered married life so gracefully, like knowing who you are and how hard change is for you. I just want to give you credit that like you came into married life and like you stepped up to the plate, and it was like as if you had been doing this for like years. And I've just loved seeing you grow in this new season of life, because you are this well-rounded, amazing woman that I'm so proud that I got to marry on August 3rd, 2024.
Thanks.
All right, so hopefully there won't be any sad tears in this next part. But what's been the most challenging part of marriage and living together?
I honestly think the most challenging part of marriage hasn't been anything to do with us, but like outside, like voices, opinions, like it's really wild. But like Christian people are not, like married or not, divorced or not, like regardless of the age group, how long they've been married, everything that we've heard from people consistently is negative about marriage. Like the rhetoric about marriage is like, oh, like, well, that feeling's gonna wear off. Oh, how's marriage? Marriage is good. Oh, well,
she won't make you those meals after year one.
Right. Or even beyond that, like, oh, like, like it's only good right now, or like communication. If it's like struggling now, it only gets worse as you have like kids and this. And like the thought process is that like, if there are issues or like little things here and there, like they will get worse, which I think is true if you're not two people that are deeply committed to improving it day by day. Like I think your first year of marriage, like which is built up to be like the most amazing part of your marriage, it shouldn't be that way. I think from the wedding day to like whenever you close your eyes on planet Earth, like your marriage should get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter as time goes on. And I know that life will get increasingly more complex, like as you add children into the mix and 15 dogs or whatever the case is, or 15 dogs, whatever the case is. But I think that has been the hardest part for me, is like navigating the opinions of outsiders while like trying to like shield our relationship from those kinds of like opinions, and like not letting it get to me, or not letting it like change my disposition on like how I feel about things.
Yeah.
Because like it can really get you in a place where you become cynical as opposed to like hopeful.
Yeah.
Or like where you adopt like a kind of growth mindset that like, okay, we messed up here, or like we didn't handle this as best as we could, but it's going to get better. Like we can apply steps, or like self-reflect and become better versions of ourselves to make this work.
Yeah.
Right. And like hearing people always just be like, oh no, it just gets worse. Everything gets worse. I think that's been the hardest part.
Yeah. And I think each of us can agree that we are a place of like wisdom and like like spell checking, so to speak, over decisions or opinions on our life. And it goes back to your point about your center of gravity. Like, before I might have just done stuff for myself or taken comments and maybe internalized them, but now even more so, I want to be like, what do you think about this? Yeah. Or this person said this about me. Do you think that's true about me? And you're running it through the lens and the filter of your spouse, because, they know you the best. It doesn't mean that we're always going to be objective, but it's that I trust your opinion. And I always tell you, like, I always say 5 seconds on the shot clock. Like, I'm going to you to shoot that 3-pointer in life. And, and in sports, because you're probably a better shooter than me.
No.
You're actually pretty good at stuff. Like, you don't give yourself credit. No. But all that to say, it's, yes, there's going to be outside voices, but your center of gravity is each other, and you have to filter that through that and through God, and making sure that your relationship is so close with God that anything that comes through you automatically is going through God, and allowing God to speak to you in that situation. I think for me, the most challenging thing about married life is that I feel like we have no time to do anything, because we're so preoccupied with, like, we come home, we go to work, we come home. I feel like the laundry is never ending, then we got to do dishes. Then we got to, do stuff for meal prep, content creation. And now we're starting a podcast because we have all the time in the world. No, but because, it's just becoming more increasingly hard to find us time. And we have to be much more intentional about that. And it seems weird that we have to like maybe schedule that or pencil that in. But if you don't sometimes and expect spontaneity to take you, through your marriage, then it's a sinking ship.
Right. And I think sometimes like people want the spontaneity because it like signals like excitement. But I think the biggest things in your life, like an interview or like a whatever, the first day of a job, like you do write those things on your calendar.
Yeah.
Right. And these things are like spending meaningful, dedicated, intentional time is something that's of the utmost importance. And I think like excitement can come from different things, but that is a conversation for another time.